Salut et bienvenue. In today's lesson, we want to talk about object pronouns. Object pronouns. In one of our previous lessons, we talked about subject pronouns. Now, the difference is subject pronouns perform actions in the sentence, whereas object pronouns receive actions performed by subject pronouns. So they are receivers of action rather than performers of action. Do we get that right? Now, we're talking about pronouns. Now, pronouns usually or generally replace nouns in a sentence. So, for instance, we say, I see John. Do you see John? Yes, I see John. Instead of repeating that word, John, we find a pronoun in English, we say him. Do you see John? Yes, I see him. Now, it's the same context in French. That's what we want to apply here. But the placement is a bit different. Whereas in English, we say, I see you, I, subject, see, verb, you, object. In French, it's different. It's I, you, see. It's still translated as I see you, but the structure is I, you, see. So subject, object, verb. That's the difference in French, generally. In a few other cases, the verb actually comes before the object, but generally, we will say that the object comes before the verb in French. We're not talking about those cases today. We'll talk about that in another lesson. So let's get to it. What are they? They are me, te, le, la, et l'apostrophe. Nous, vous, les. Me, te, le, la, et l'apostrophe, nous, vous, les. Obviously, le will represent il. Il, something masculine. And la will represent elle, or something feminine. That's the idea. So with that same sentence that we started with, we want to fix it now. That's why sometimes English speakers who are learning French will say, je vois toi. Je vois toi. For I see you. But that sentence structure is wrong. It's not even toi, because toi is used in a different case, not as an object of a verb in this form. So, te is the correct one to use. So instead of saying je vois toi, you say je te vois. So first we think of the infinitive, voir. Then we conjugate it, je vois. Then we place the object pronoun right before the verb, je te vois. Je te vois. I see you. Tu regardes la télé? Now we can respond by saying, oui, je regarde la télé. But we want to avoid repeating the word télé, télé, télé. Just so you know, télé is the short for télévision. La télévision shortened to la télé. So instead of saying oui, je regarde la télé, we can say oui, je la regarde. Oui, je la regarde. La is elle. It's a feminine noun, so that's why we're saying je la regarde. Vous cherchez le magasin? Oui, je le cherche. Le magasin, masculine noun, so le. Oui, je le cherche. Now, let's look at another sentence. This time we're talking about more than one magasin. Vous cherchez les magasins? Oui, nous les cherchons. Nous les cherchons, because it's more than one, plural. So, les in this case. You got it? Est-ce que Jean écoute la radio? La radio is the object here, replaceable by la. Est-ce que Jean écoute la radio? Now, there's something extra that needs to be done here because of the spelling of écouter. Écouter. Now, is la radio? Normally, we would have said, oui, il la écoute. But because of the spelling of écouter starts with a vowel, we cannot use la écoute, we use l'apostrophe. So we say, oui, il écoute. Est-ce que Jean écoute la radio? Oui, il écoute. You got it right? Good. Now a very popular one, the verb aimer, aimer. Je t'aime, je t'aime. Most of you know this one. Je t'aime, that's where it comes from. So instead of saying je aime toi or j'aime toi, toi is not used. Ça, c'est un pronom tonique. Let's focus on the placement. So instead of saying j'aime toi, you say je t'aime, je t'aime. Te is you. Or we could also say je vous aime if we're using vous. But if we want to use te, we say je t'aime. Now, because of the spelling of aime, starts with a vowel, so we won't use te, we use t apostrophe. Je t'aime. Je t'aime. I love you. Je t'aime. Remember, this one is very useful. You will use it one day. Now, let's have a look at the indirect ones. The indirect ones are very similar. The only difference lies with the third person. So we still have me, we still have te, but then where we had le, la, et l'apostrophe, we have lui, lui. And then we still have nous, vous, and where we have les for the direct, we now have leur. Pronounce leur. So lui and leur are the only difference in here. So when do we use lui or leur? Now, these are indirect. And the idea of indirect is that there is a preposition between the verb and the object. Usually it's the preposition à in French. À preposition. To. So, unless the verb uses a preposition like to before the object, you cannot use lui or leur in French in front of a verb. You cannot use it. That's the rule. So, ask yourself the question. For instance, one of those verbs is parler, because we say in French, on parle à quelqu'un. On parle à quelqu'un, on ne parle pas quelqu'un. So because of that that's why we use lui. So we say, je lui parle. Je lui parle. Another example will be with the verb dire. On dit à quelqu'un, on ne dit pas quelqu'un. So, je lui dis. Je lui dis. You got it now? Let's look at a few more examples. Je lui parle maintenant. Je lui parle maintenant. Now, you may hear je le parle maintenant. That's incorrect. Because parler uses the preposition à. So it's je lui parle maintenant for I'm speaking to him now. Je lui parle maintenant. You may hear people say, oh, je lui regarde, je lui regarde. That's bad French. On ne regarde pas à quelqu'un. On regarde quelqu'un. You don't, it's not working in English, so I don't want to put it in English. On ne regarde pas à quelqu'un, on regarde quelqu'un. Donc, c'est je le regarde. Je le regarde. Si on regardait à quelqu'un, nous allions dire je lui regarde. Mais on ne regarde pas à quelqu'un, on regarde quelqu'un. You got it right? Let's go. André leur parle du match. André leur parle du match. So you see it? Parler, leur, leur. Leur goes with preposition, à preposition. Now let's have a look at some examples. Now you tell me whether these sentences are correct or not. Je lui regarde. Je lui regarde. Is it correct or incorrect? Now this sentence is incorrect because in French, on ne regarde pas à quelqu'un, on regarde quelqu'un. Donc, on ne doit pas dire lui. On dit le. Je le regarde. You got it right? Next one. Nous leur parlons de la femme. Nous leur parlons de la femme. Is it correct or incorrect? Did you say it was correct? Yes, that's correct. Because on parle à quelqu'un, donc on doit dire leur. Leur. Nous leur parlons de la femme. Correct. Tu cherches moi. Tu cherches moi. Is that correct or incorrect? It's incorrect because the object, moi, is misplaced. It shouldn't be there in the first place. Tu cherches, that's the subject and the verb. As we said before, the object pronoun must come before the verb. So, and it takes the form of me. Tu me cherches. Tu me cherches. That's the correct one. Now, is this sentence correct? Vous nous regardez. Vous nous regardez. Is it correct? Yes, it is. It's correct. So with nous and vous in terms of the indirect cases, you don't really find it because it's the same thing. You don't really detect it. But the indirect cases will usually show in lui et leur. So if you're using a verb in French that takes the preposition, that takes a preposition like a preposition, you have to use lui or leur if you're talking about him or her. It doesn't matter whether it's a female or a male, as long as you're using a verb that takes the preposition a, in that case, you will not use le. You cannot say je le parle, meaning I'm talking to him, je le parle, no. You cannot also say je lui vois. That's bad French. Je lui vois, on ne voit pas à quelqu'un, on voit quelqu'un. So it's je le vois. You get the concept? Too easy. Thanks for watching today. Have a nice day. Bonne journée. Au revoir et à bientôt. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye.